So Digital Foundry decided to pick apart a game. They do that a lot. Before, during, and after the games come out, they find the resolution or internal frame rates, internal resolutions, display technologies that can sort of make the game look better or look worse, film grain this, film grain that. This is before games even come out, and oftentimes when they do come out, the critiques sort of still continue. I'm not saying Digital Foundry shouldn't exist or you shouldn't be interested in those things, but I feel like we sort of dipped our toes into this deep side of the pool that has really nothing to do with going swimming. And I feel like if you're going to buy a video game based on metrics, then you're not really going to enjoy a video game, or you've lost the plot when it comes to what video games are all about. I'm not making an excuse for Xbox and their lack of great games. They suck. They absolutely do. Their first party is an absolute mess still. And with the ideological slant that Microsoft is on 100% into the deep end of the crazy pool, I don't have much faith in their first party. But HellBlade 2, Senua's whatever, looks absolutely incredible. So forget about internal resolution, forget about frame rate, forget about black bars at the top and the bottom of the screen. We'll get to all of that. When you buy a video game system, when you buy a, Xbox and you buy the next Xbox, you're a console gamer. You're looking for an evolution in the graphics, in the things that you've seen from one generation and the things that you will see in the next generation. And if you don't see that leap, then what's the point? And certainly we're seeing a leap here when it comes to just the graphics. So HellBlade 2 looks absolutely incredible. And it's very exciting from a graphic standpoint to play something that looks like this. So forget about the resolution targets, forget about the frame rate target. Let's just look at the game, look at the graphics, and say, yeah, this looks like a huge leap from the last game, and also a huge leap coming from last generation to this generation. This might be the biggest leap we've seen so far in just graphics. But here is where I feel like we should really be concerned. What about the gameplay? What about what you're actually doing in the game? Because once you get past looking around and standing there and taking screenshots, you have to actually do something in the video game. And they've talked about the combat being evolved. They say it feels better, but it's still 1 versus 1. Even though you had sort of, multiple enemies in the first game, it's 1 versus 1. You sort of go into this arena-styled environment. When you fight, the screen is very dark, and you're fighting that one opponent. They say that the combat feels more visceral, and that's great. But after that, you're essentially walking straight ahead, and you're still solving these looking puzzles that are in the game. They say those looking puzzles are back. So the engagement when it comes to the gameplay feels very similar to the first game. I'm not saying that they should have evolved it, but certainly I feel like if you're looking at a sequel to a game that, say, Microsoft or Xbox wants to be a staple IP, I don't know how it's going to work creating a character that carries a franchise that has mental illness. I don't think that's a great idea, but this is the sequel, and certainly they've only evolved. Right now, what it looks like is the way that the game looks like. So if the combat is better, but the looking puzzles are there, and you're essentially walking straight ahead for 6 to 7, at the outside 8 hours, is that enough to warrant this being this huge IP? I don't think so. Hopefully, though, I am wrong. I am more excited about this game when it comes to Microsoft and Xbox than any game that they've ever released almost. I can't remember a game in recent memory that's gotten me excited from Xbox first party to the point that this game has, and it's because I have these expectations, and they may be unrealistic, but I sort of felt like this could be Microsoft's third-person action adventure game, a la something like, a Horizon game or something like that. I don't feel like it's going to be that, mostly because of the subject matter and the character in the world, and partly because I just feel like with the cost of creating something that looks like this and giving it essentially away to people in a subscription service, I feel like you're just going to get a very good-looking HellBlade 1 with this game. Is that enough? I don't know. I'm very excited to play it, and hopefully it has some replay value, because if it's just 6 to 7 to 8 hours and it looks really good and the gameplay is very similar to the first, once I'm done, it's going to be pretty disappointing to not be able to stay in this world with this character and sort of explore more of the lore and the world. Now let's talk about presentation, because I remember another game that was all about the presentation and the cinematic feel and black bars at the top and the bottom and the display resolution being very low and people making fun of the game. And yet here we are, history repeating itself. The Order 1886 was one of the best looking games at the time in that generation, and the developer used a cinematic effect to make sure that you got something as a console gamer going from the PlayStation 3 to the PlayStation 4 that you hadn't seen before. It wasn't about driving a spec to PC. It wasn't about being the best it possibly could when it came to frame rate or resolution. It's about getting everything to work as well as possible and giving a console gamer an experience that they hadn't had in the previous generation. And of course, if artists want to create things like this, and in order to push the graphics, they put the black bars at the top and the bottom, and maybe that cuts half of the internal resolution that needs to be rendered, therefore the graphics can be better. I don't know. I'm just making things up in my head to sort of justify it, because I really don't care that much. I want to play great video games, and I enjoyed the Order 1886. I thought that the gameplay was good, not great. Certainly much better third-person over-the-shoulder shooters like Gears of War, but I loved the setting and the atmosphere, the time period, and of course the subject matter, werewolves and vampires and things like that. The game was just really good, and it looked incredible, and that's the point. HellBlade 2 is essentially this generation's The Order 1886. You see people making fun of it. You see people talking about black bars at the top and the bottom. And curiously, some of these people are the same people that made fun of The Order 1886 or defended The Order 1886 for having the black bars at the top and the bottom. The point is, Digital Foundry, professional YouTubers for Xbox or PlayStation, all of this noise is detracting from games. What is the game giving me besides an upgrade in the graphics? Should I appreciate that huge leap in graphics? Absolutely. But if that's the only selling point, after you're done looking at it, what do you actually do? So HellBlade 2 needs to evolve gameplay. It needed to, in my opinion, get rid of those looking puzzles and add in something a bit more engaging for the player. Maybe open up the game just a bit so that you can explore with Senua. And I'm not saying you can't, but from what I've seen, they talk about it being extremely linear from point A to point B, a fight, a looking puzzle, point A to point B, a fight, a looking puzzle. Now, that'll be great the first time around, but like I said, I'm looking for something a little bit more meatier. I want this game to give me more to do, and of course, I want to replay the game. I want to rediscover or discover things that I hadn't in the first go-around. Maybe my expectation is off when it comes to this franchise, this world, and this vision, but I was hoping that the gameplay evolved much more than the graphics. And then, of course, there's Microsoft's adherence to putting games everywhere. And by everywhere, now it seems like games are going to direct competitors like PlayStation. A few games have already gone to PlayStation. Does that mean that HellBlade 2 is going to eventually be on PlayStation 5, utilizing all of the features of the PlayStation 5 and that DualSense controller? I don't know. It seems more likely than not. So how big is HellBlade 2 to Xbox? Look, the game's coming out soon. It's on the Xbox console. I'm a console gamer. I've got an Xbox. I'm going to play it there. And hopefully it's not just one of, if not the best looking games ever. Hopefully there's much more to see and much more to do in the game. Let me know what you think about HellBlade 2. Do you think it's been overhyped to the point now where it's just going to be an extremely good-looking game, but gameplay-wise, we're going to forget about it in a couple of days past release? Or is this going to be one of those games that people talk about and is a contender for Game of the Year? And to be a Game of the Year contender, to me, you've got to have a lot more in the gameplay department than the looks department. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.